This episode of Asking for a Friend is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's be honest, midlife is a season of transition, whether it's changes in your body, your relationships, your career, or just the weight of trying to hold it all together. Sometimes you need more than a good walk or event session with a friend. You need a safe space and a trained professional to help you process it all. And that's where therapy can be a game changer. BetterHelp makes getting started simple. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a therapist in as little as 48 hours. You can message your therapist anytime and schedule sessions that fit your lifestyle. No commuting, no awkward waiting rooms. And if you don't click with your first match, you can switch therapists to find the right fit. With a 4.5-star rating on Trustpilot and thousands of positive reviews, BetterHelp is a convenient, trusted option for those ready to take a step toward better mental health. Visit BetterHelp.com/Michelle for a 10% discount off your first month and take the first step today. Therapy isn't just for crisis moments. It's for anyone who wants to feel better, think clearer, and navigate life with more confidence. Health, wellness, fitness, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. Welcome to the show, everyone. Let's talk about something that way too many of us are struggling with in silence: poor vaginal health. We openly discuss skincare, workouts, the latest health trends. But when it comes to things like vaginal dryness, discomfort, and painful sex, the conversation suddenly goes quiet. And yet, these issues affect so many women in perimenopause and menopause, impacting not just intimacy, but overall health, confidence, and quality of life. I'm so excited to sit down with Kate Wells, the founder of Parlor Games, a company on a mission to change the way we think about vaginal care. Kate saw a massive gap in the market for women's intimate wellness and set out to create a science-backed, effective, and easy-to-use vaginal estrogen cream that helps women feel comfortable, vibrant, and empowered in their bodies again. In this episode, we're diving into why vaginal health is a non-negotiable, the science behind estrogen therapy, and the risks of ignoring menopause symptoms. Plus, we'll talk about the bigger picture of menopause, hot flashes, brain fog, weight gain, and the unexpected ways declining estrogen affects our bodies. Kate Wells, welcome to Asking for a Friend.
Thank you, Michelle. I am always happy if there's a day where I get to sit and talk about hormones with someone who's interested and can share the message with other women. So thank you for the invitation.
Well, happy to have you here. And, this audience is very engaged in their wellness, and, HRT and hormone therapy and vaginal health are things that do come up all the time. I do want to let the audience know how Kate and I met. So we met through Donna Cravata. Donna is the mastermind behind the Real 50 Over 50. She invited Kate and some other people who are experts in the menopause space and had me along for the ride on a panel discussion that was incredible. And that panel discussion came out, was it last week?
Yes, it was last week.
Okay, it was last week. So we're speaking on March 26th right now. And so anyway, long story short, Kate and I decided this would be a wonderful topic for us to share with this audience. So again, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think you've got a fascinating career path. And could you share a little bit about your background and what led you to where you are today?
Right. It does have some twists and turns. And of course, at age 62, when you look back and you think, oh, yes, that's what the stepping stones were. When you're leaping from one to another through your life, oftentimes it's a bit of a blind leap. So I began my career as a teacher. I was a high school teacher in England. and love teaching. I do. I love seeing anyone's eyes. Doesn't matter what age group. Just like that dawn of like understanding of a concept or an idea or something. I love, conveying information in a way that someone goes, "Oh, I get it." And so I taught for about 6 years, and I've always been ambitious. And I recognized that if I was going to have a career in teaching or in education, I would not be in the classroom. I would not be doing what I really enjoyed. And so then I figured, well, if I am going to be in an administrative or leadership role, how about business? And I found my way into the Lloyds Bank management training program. Lloyds Bank was one of the major high street banks in the UK. And they had still have a pretty extensive leadership training program. And I got into that. I was loving that, really enjoying discovering the process of business. And then my husband at the time came along and said, "Hey, I found a job in Portland, Oregon. Shall we go?" We were living in Brighton on the south coast of England at the time. And like Brighton to Oregon, that's one heck of an Oregon trail. And so long and the short of that story is like, heck yes, let's go. And the plan had been to be here for just a couple of years. I would do my MBA at Portland State, and then we would go home and start a family. But we had so much fun in Oregon. We skied in the winter, we biked, we kayaked, we did all the things. And, by the end of that first year, it was like we were going nowhere. We had bought a house. I was expecting our first baby, and coming here and staying here has it's been transformative for this, short, slightly uptight British woman. It's transformed me. And that's all a good thing. And so I did my MBA, and I have done consulting work. But a big portion of my work has been in the integrative medicine field. I have worked in and run and led salivary hormone testing laboratories. I have worked as a product development specialist or developer in a genetics testing laboratory. And, through all of this, I was the business person. I am the business person through and through. I love the business process. However, I fell in love with the biochemistry, particularly of the endocrine system, our hormone messaging system. And we would go to conferences, and instead of just hanging out at the booth, at the table to, wait for doctors to arrive, I would go in and I would listen to all the presentations, and I would absorb this information and kind of from an autodidact point of view, taught myself, filled in a lot of gaps in terms of biochemistry and how the body works. And through this process, I would then talk to, not the practitioners who are my customers, but the just everyday people, my friends. And I can remember one time I was at the dentist with my daughter, and we get talking about what I do, and it's all about saliva hormone testing. And she says, Oh, my breasts are really tender. Is that something to do with my hormones? And then before you know it, I've got 6 dental hygienists sitting around me, listening to me talk while one of them is working on my daughter's teeth. And it dawned on me that, women just don't know. They don't know what's going on with their hormones. And so it has been become my mission to share information in a way that makes sense, that gets women to that, oh, I get it. And once they get it, then they feel so much more empowered to make some adjustments, to make some changes, maybe to find a practitioner or at least find solution for some of the symptoms. So, I worked in labs, did some more consulting work, and then I tried to retire. I've actually tried to retire twice. Like that's happened. And then my best friend, Kirsty Hegg, who is my business partner, she and I are 50-50 owners of Parlor Games. She came to me and said, Kate, I've got this issue with vaginal dryness. Do you know anything about that? And I'm like, oh, I am the friend you've longed for. And I gave her some estriol hormone cream. And within a couple of weeks, transformed her body back into its well-functioning state.
Amazing how that happens.
I mean, now she's an entrepreneur. She's a serial entrepreneur. And so we sat around, as women do, plotting revolutions in parlors, and decided that we had to bring this to the world. I knew that there was such a gap in knowledge and information, and there was such a gap in resources for women, particularly for vaginal health, for urinary health. But she has this direct to consumer experience, which I don't have. Mine is all wholesale. It's working with practitioners. And so we have combined our experience. I have this business management experience and the science knowledge, and she has the marketing and depth of experience over there. And that brought us together to form and grow Parlor Games. And it has been a wild ride, I tell you.
So what has surprised you most about this journey, Kate?
So one of the things that I found for me, I think I have always been someone who made things happen. I'm a doer in the world. I make things happen. But I found my way into Reiki as a hands-on energetic healing modality. And that allowed me to continue to develop my spiritual side, my spiritual relationship with the universe and with the source. And through that, I have learned to trust and allow. And now my life is less about making things happen, and it's about allowing things happen. And, 20 years ago, if I had ever thought that sentence would come out of my mouth, just no way. So I think that maturing within myself to know that I have this unique experience of living what I am here to do in this lifetime. I mean, that operates at kind of a vibrational level within me. And whenever I begin to get, frayed because I'm a little bit busy, I've got too many things on my plate, or, we're hiring and that just adds a load, then I take a deep breath and I calm myself, and I'm like, oh no, I remind myself, you are in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and just allow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that has surprised me most.
Oh, can we go back to that? Let's go back to that.
Yes, of course.
Because that is something that I want women to practice. I think that was a genius thing you just said about it's not always about making things happen. It's about letting things happen, and that we don't always have to be in total control of everything, right? Mm-hmm. That was I like that. That was my inspiration for the day. Thank you very much, Kate Wells.
Great.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I kind of needed that today, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
I think it takes a little courage, because you are letting go of control. You are saying to the world, I want to be of service. I want to make a difference. I have a vague idea what this could mean, but bring it. I am at your service. And here we are from my point of view. But it takes the courage to not, hold on so tightly to control.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the science of things. Vaginal health is a topic that still probably doesn't get enough attention. I mean, I hear about it just because of the people I follow on like Instagram, and I follow you. But can you break down why vaginal estrogen is so important for midlife women?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring several concepts in which are kind of woven together. But one of the things I'll start with is, let's just think about our skin barrier. We can look at the back of our hand, our arms, we can look at our face, and we see our skin. That skin barrier, the integrity of that, how it holds together, is critical for the health of the whole organism that we are, our entire body, because the skin barrier, this organ, keeps pathogens out. So we want to make sure that our skin is healthy. I mean, women put a lot of money into making sure their skin is healthy and supple. But what we don't tend to think about is the skin layer that lines the vagina. And yet it's still very much part of this whole skin layer system. Now, estrogen is very important for the maintenance of the skin that lines the vagina. And as we go through menopause, that menopause transition where our periods have all gone to hell in a handbasket, and we don't know what's happening, that is an indicator that estrogen levels are beginning to drop. And then post-menopause, once we've had that period of time of 12 months without a period and we are technically post-menopause transition, our estrogen levels really are low at this point. Now, it can take a little while for this to be felt, or it can be felt immediately. But the skin cells in the vagina are sitting there saying, give me estrogen, people, give me estrogen, people. I could do with some estrogen here. And when they don't have enough, the skin loses its strength. And so then, if somebody is wanting to be in an intimate relationship with their partner, penetrative sex can be painful. Let's just be straight out about this. You're putting something hopefully hard and large in there, and that's rubbing against that skin. It's moving backwards and forwards a lot.
Yeah.
And so if we're not careful, if that skin is getting thinner and thinner, it may tear. And once you begin to get little micro tears in the skin, the body's going to try and repair that. I mean, think about, when you're a kid and you fell off your bike and you grazed your knee. Mm-hmm. The first thing your immune system does is like, quickly repair. And it puts a little skin over there and forms a scar. And you pick at it and your mother says, stop picking at that, just let it heal.
Your mom too?
So, it's really hard to imagine the inside of your vagina like just one long scab, but it can get to be like that for some women who have been really starved of estrogen. And so as the immune system is frantically trying to repair that skin, it's localized inflammation. It's part of the healing process. But if that doesn't happen, it's just low-grade continuous inflammation. And when the body is in an inflamed state, that is at the root of many of other diseases, such as Alzheimer's. That is very strongly correlated with a state of inflammation in the body. So we want to supplement with estrogen to make sure that vaginal tissue has its supply to keep that tissue strong and supple. And it's also important for maintaining the pH of the vagina. And making sure that you have a low pH is critical for making sure that bacteria can't get in there and start to multiply and cause infection.
I had a client who was talking about her mother and her mother-in-law. She was taking care of both of them. Both of them got UTIs.
Oh.
And they were in their 80s, right? She said their UTI presented like dementia, like dementia in 24 hours, kind of like didn't know how to turn a light off with the light switch, kind of scary.
Yeah.
And they finally figured out, it's a UTI. But, she said, had they been on estrogen therapy, vaginal estrogen therapy, they probably could have done a great deal to curtail these recurring UTIs in both her mom and her mother-in-law. Can you talk about why there's a connection with UTIs and vaginal health?
Absolutely. And I too have had that experience. About a year ago, I had this persistent UTI that I could not get rid of. And I went to a conference. I was, exhibiting at a conference. And I remember clearly opening this box of all the things I need to put on my table. And I'm just looking at this box going, I know I'm supposed to do something with this.
Oh, no.
But, and my daughter was helping me, And I just looked at her and said, help. My brain could not put it together. I've got a decent brain, and for it to just not function like that, it was frightening.
Yeah.
So the connection is that just as we have estrogen receptors in the vagina, we also have receptors, little doorways to the cell, in the urethra, in the tube the tube that goes from the bladder to the outside world. We have receptors for estrogen all around the bladder and in the muscles that are around the bladder neck. And so, again, with a lack of estrogen, some of the function of the muscles and the bladder and the urethra will be diminished. And just as you can get sort of micro tearing in the vagina, you can get disruptions to the skin surface and the urethra. And that makes it so much more susceptible to pathogens. And when we think about, all the exits in a woman, they are very closely located.
Yes.
It is super easy for E. coli to get from the anus to the urethra to the vagina. And not to put too fine a point on it, but we get wrinkly. The vulva gets wrinkly. The skin is losing its collagen. And in all those wrinkles, it's so much easier for little pathogens to be sitting in there and then, transferred to the vagina or to the urethra. So our likelihood of getting E. coli in particular where it shouldn't be increases, and then we don't have the defenses to fight it off. So UTIs are way more common. But here is another concept that I have been doing a lot more reading about and really trying to dig into, and that is the concept of biofilm. Now, biofilm is a kind of a mucus-like film that bacteria will put around them to protect themselves from antibiotics. And so someone has a UTI and they get antibiotics for that. And the antibiotics will often, knock out 80 to 85% of those pathogens, of the bacteria. But there is a portion of them that may get stored in biofilm on the layer inside of the bladder. And so when circumstances are right, they can begin to grow again. And there you have a repeat UTI.
Yeah.
And
it becomes resistant.
That's right. Yes. So you might be able to knock out the majority of the bacteria, but not all of them. So there are ways to disrupt the biofilm, and there are some good nutraceutical companies out there that make products for that. But this is just it's a concept that is only just beginning to have more conversation about it.
Yeah.
So, but because of the inflammation that occurs with a UTI, it quickly can go to the brain, where it is resulting in that confusion and those dementia-like symptoms.
Someone close to me was having a lot of genitourinary issues, and they started on vaginal estrogen therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Game changer, like life-changing results for that person. And I talk to my friends all the time about the importance of vaginal health and going on, vaginal estrogen. And I still get pushback. I get, oh, well, I'm not having sex with my husband anyway, or I'm not too worried about that. And I'm like, look, you may not have issues right this second, but this is important for when we're looking 5, 10, 15 years down the road. You're going to wish you did this. And we're going to take a quick break, Kate. But when we come back, I do want to talk about some of the confusion around estrogen safety. When I turned 60, I caught myself thinking, is it time to head to the dermatologist? My skin had lost its glow. My neck and jawline were changing. And fillers just didn't feel like the right move for me. Too expensive, kind of risky, and not really me. That's when I found Remon, Korea's #1 skincare line. I started with the Expert Experience Kit, and within weeks, I could see and feel the difference. My skin looked brighter, firmer, and for the first time in a while, I actually loved my skincare routine. Remon delivers what it promises, science-backed, clean products that give real results. And now with their new color cosmetics, it's skincare and beauty you can feel confident about putting on your face. Want to fall back in love with your skin? Click the link in the show notes or reach out. I'd love to help you get started. Okay, we're back. Before we took the break, I mentioned that I wanted to talk about estrogen safety. And can you demystify the science and address the common concerns that women have around estrogen therapy?
Yes. And I feel this is definitely one of my missions, is to try and change the dialogue here, not just among individuals, among women, but among practitioners too. So there was a large scale study that went underway in the late 1990s, looking at the impacts of using hormone replacement therapy, and this is synthetic hormone replacement therapy, based on pregnant mare's urine. And 4 or 5 years into this, some of the early results suggested that there were some risks. And the early analysis of some of the data suggested that this big message was really important to share to the world. Estrogen causes cancer. Now, I will just say that is nonsense. If somebody does have breast cancer and it's estrogen receptor positive, estrogen may feed it, but it is highly unlikely to cause it.
Well, and if you think about it, Kate, if estrogen caused cancer, we'd have a bunch of 20-year-olds
right
with cancer.
Yes.
Sorry, it doesn't it doesn't work that way. And I do want to clear this up too. This is like Prempro and Premarin that were used in the study. Okay.
Yeah, the synthetic hormones.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, this was massive news, hit the media, and practitioners just pulled women off their hormone replacement left, right, and center. And there has been a gap of 20 years where women have been very underserved because of this false interpretation of the results. Now, those results have been reanalyzed multiple times. There was one arm of that study that continued using just estrogen, not estrogen plus the progestin, and discovered that actually estrogen can be protective against breast cancer in many breast cancers. So over time, that message is gradually being unwound. However, it's not translating yet into many medical practices, and that message is not translating or transmuting through into our general conversations. And practitioners will still say to patients, and we hear from them a lot from our customers, they will say, well, we'll put you on, but we want to get you off it as soon as possible. And that's because they're talking about the synthetic hormones. And there are potential risks with these synthetic hormones, particularly if they are oral hormones. When someone takes a hormone through the mouth, it goes into the stomach, and then it is, shunted off to the liver to be broken down. That's the first thing that it's a big, important role that the liver has. And studies are beginning to indicate that if the liver is breaking down these oral hormones, they are more likely to be broken into metabolites that can increase the risk for developing breast cancer. So it's become pretty well established, certainly in integrative medicine, functional medicine fields, that oral estrogen is not the way to go. Topical estrogen means you can use less of a hormone because it doesn't have to be first broken down by the liver. It can just go straight into the system, and it is much safer to use than an oral estrogen.
Oh, I was going to ask you a question. So I want to make sure that we're going to differentiate. When you say topical estrogen, you're talking about a cream that you would rub into your arm or a patch, correct?
Yes,
Because
that's right.
vaginal estrogen is not absorbed systemically, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Because it's in small amounts, you just need a small amount. The vast majority of it will be used locally. And a little bit may pass through into the bloodstream, but estriol is so protective it's not a problem, isn't that?
Okay. I wanted to make sure we cleared that up. So, all right. Okay.
So there are a growing number of practitioners who recognize that, oh, absolutely, women have to have hormones. Just because they're done with the reproductive phase of their life does not mean that their bodies are finished with hormones. We need them for so many functions throughout our body. And so increasing numbers of practitioners are suggesting that they use topical cream, a topical estrogen, a topical progesterone, which delivers the hormone directly into the system for use throughout the whole body. Now, some practitioners still not open to that. And so women are taking things into their own hands and going to look for solutions. And that's where we come in. We really want to provide the education, the knowledge, share the science, as well as have products that really work.
So tell me a little bit about what you offer and how people go about getting your product.
So we offer our flagship product, the one we started with, Kirsty and I started with, is a vaginal estriol cream. And it's a very small amount in there, just enough to help rebuild that tissue. And that by far is, what we hear the most about from our customers. We get messages like, oh, you've saved my life. You've saved my marriage. I can be intimate again. I can go outside my house without fear of peeing again. So, that's what we get most of the feedback about. However, if someone is going to be using estrogen, even the estriol in our cream, it's a good idea to have some progesterone in there as well. And progesterone is a superhuman hormone. It's important for men, it's important for women, and we run out of it. We stop making it. And, our adrenal glands are supposed to be our little backup system, but, everyone's so stressed and people's adrenal glands are so tired that they're not making progesterone. They're struggling to make cortisol. And so the progesterone it's over 400 functions within the body. And so adding some of that back in is important. And then we have a DHEA cream. That's a whole other topic about the importance of DHEA for overall wellness. And then we have a fun product. It's called Chaos Calmer. And it's for anxiety. And, there's a lot of that around. And so it's to help with that.
Oh, okay. Well, then you get the anxiety because your cortisol is, pumping out, over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how all of this is so interconnected, right? You get the sleeplessness and those issues that the progesterone will definitely help with. You talk a little bit about that, like just some of the other things that progesterone does help with.
Oh, yes. So one of the things that women experience as they're going through perimenopause and through menopause is weight gain. And a lot of that can be due to, or a contributing fact is the fact that their progesterone levels are dropping. Progesterone is important for helping manage insulin and management of blood sugar. And if we're not able to utilize food for energy to get the blood sugar into the cell to, burn to create energy, then it gets shunted off and stored as fat tissue. And progesterone helps with the management of all of that. So that's one thing. Progesterone also has some interesting relationships with the neurotransmitters, the neurochemicals in our brain. Progesterone, some of it is metabolized into allopregnanolone. And then from allopregnanolone, that will prompt the production of GABA. And GABA is one of our calming neurotransmitters. It's the one that helps us calm down, helps us feel relaxed, and it's a counterbalance to the excitatory neurotransmitter glutamate. Now, we do need some glutamate, but when we live stressful lives, there's a tendency to make too much of it, and we've got to have it balanced by GABA. But if progesterone has dropped, that's one of our major sources for making GABA, or for prompting the production of GABA. So mood, so it helps with mood, helps with weight management. Progesterone is important for cardiovascular health. It helps, for want of a better phrase, keep the veins and arteries, keeps them smooth and healthy, so there's less likely to be a little rupture in there. And of course, once you get a rupture, you need to repair that, and you get a little scar. And then if there's a scar there, then there's an increased risk of a blood clot. So all these little steps in the process. And then the other one, of course, is memory. Progesterone is important for the ability to remember information, to form new memories. And it's not like we're going off, to go to college at age 60. I mean, I have thought about that and thought, no.
Wouldn't surprise me if you did.
But we do need to remember things like, we need to plot our ways around a town. We need to map things. When we go to the grocery store, we need to map where we find things.
We have to be able to find our car when we go back out to the parking lot, Kate. Jeez.
Right. So we still need our memories, and we want our memories for the, 35, 40 years after menopause, for heaven's sake. So those are just some highlights there.
Yeah. And so, and kind of back to estrogen too, and this is one that we didn't talk about, but bone health. Mm-hmm. The importance of using estrogen for our bone health. I mean, that's a huge one, because the data out there is not kind when it looks at fracture and death rates. I should say morbidity rates, death rates.
Right.
It's a little harsh, but morbidity rate. So that's the other one. So I always tell my listeners, look, if you're a candidate for hormone therapy, find someone that will listen to you. Mm-hmm. Because I think oftentimes the doctor says no, and we just say, okay, and we don't advocate for ourselves. So Kate, how do people go about getting your products? Are they prescription?
No, these are over the counter. These are hormones, and gosh, I think, products like ours have been available for, 30, 40 years. Demand is growing. There are a growing number of women who are not just saying to their doctor, okay, they're saying, all right, well, I'm going to sort this out on my own. If just because you don't know doesn't mean there isn't a solution for me. Mm-hmm. And they are on there looking for products. So, our website, parlor-games.com, so parlor-games.com. We've got so many articles in our blog section. So go have a read through there. You could read to your heart's content, I think, for quite some time going through our blogs. And our products are all listed on there. But one of the things that we have that I think sets Parlor Games apart is that we have a community. We have a private Facebook group that is just for customers. And in this group, customers are able to ask questions of each other. I mean, it's 35,000 strong plus.
Oh, wow.
Strong. Now, it's a lot of women in there. And there will be posts like, I've been in this group for 6 months. I'm very shy. And they're posting anonymously. This is the first time I've had the courage to ask this question. And they'll ask a question about their intimate health. And before they know it, they've got 80 responses.
And I love that.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. I love the fact that women are willing to say, oh, this is what I did, or I hear you. Women just want to know that they're not out there alone on an island.
Right.
That they're the only ones experiencing these issues. And the other thing is, Kate, is there are so many wacky symptoms of perimenopause and menopause that, I mean, we have no idea. I mean, I started having serious perimenopause probably in my 40s. I had no idea that's what it was. I had never even heard of perimenopause till I was well into my 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So women just aren't fed that information, and they may be walking around with something that could be so easy to solve with some hormone therapy. Yeah.
Right. Well, certainly from a perimenopause point of view, I was very fortunate to know about progesterone. Progesterone starts to drop in our, I would say, early 40s, because, we think about how the body works. We get a surge of estrogen in the first half of the month. And this is what is prompting that uterine lining to grow, ready to receive an implanted egg. Then once the egg is released from the ovary and is beginning to, make its way along the fallopian tube, it has a little sac around it. And that sac is the what's called the corpus luteum. And that is where the progesterone is stored.
Ah.
Now, that gives us a surge of progesterone in the second half of the cycle. It says to estrogen, okay, hold it. You've grown enough. Now we're going to stop, and we're going to, concentrate, and we're going to improve the quality of this uterine lining. But it's the stopping point that, that makes estrogen stop. All this just like grow, 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 grow. Now, as we get into our 40s, particularly if we've got a stressful set of activities going on in our life, we begin to miss ovulation. We still get a period, but we're not ovulating every month. And when you're not ovulating, you're not making that surge of progesterone in the second half. You're still making your estrogen, but it is unbalanced by that progesterone. And that is when your symptoms start to happen, because estrogen, it's great, but too much of it is not. It can lead to bloating. It can lead to imbalances in mood. It can lead to poor sleep because we don't have the chemical messengers to help our brain calm down and rest for sleep. So those early symptoms, once you begin to see those, a woman can begin to start to use progesterone. And I was so lucky that I knew that and could start using progesterone probably when I was around 47. And I used it absolutely religiously the second half of my cycle, because I knew I wasn't making my own progesterone in the same volume that I used to. And that, I don't, this is not a brag, it's an illustration, but I flew through that menopause transition because I had adequate progesterone.
Yeah.
And my estrogen gradually dropped and dropped and dropped and eventually caught up with, low internal production. But because I was balanced all the way through and I had that supply of progesterone by supplementing, I think I had like 5 hot flashes. And, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah. I've never told my audience this story, but I did have a hysterectomy back in 2021 because I had very large fibroids, uterine fibroids. And the doctor, she was wanting to do the surgery, but she said, I would feel more comfortable if we could shrink these fibroids a little bit. So she put me on a course of Lupron, which, for people listening, Lupron is a drug that was, I believe, developed for prostate cancer to shut off hormone production in men to quit feeding the prostate cancer. So it cut off the testosterone. So what essentially they were trying to do with me was shut off all my hormones that were possibly feeding the growth of these fibroids. Well, it didn't work. But the only thing it was successful in doing was totally shutting off every bit of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, anything that my body was making. Mm-hmm. So by the time I had this hysterectomy and everything's gone, right, I was just depleted. There was nothing. And I didn't realize until like they ran some numbers, got all my hormone numbers, and they're like, "Oh, Michelle, we gotta get you going again." So that was, vaginal estrogen. I did oral estrogen. I did progesterone. I did testosterone all at once because I needed some help. Right. So I'm a big, big fan of HRT and what it can do for women. So I so appreciate the path that you were on and getting this message out to women. And I love the community, Kate, that you've built.
Well, and that is a little bit of why we went with Parlor Games for our company name. We picked Parlor because women, as I said right at the beginning, women have gathered. We've gathered in parlors and cups of tea and our knitting or our sewing and plotted revolutions for a long time. Women have always gathered in community and made a difference through that, sharing ideas, helping each other out. It's what we do as women. I joined the business world in the UK, in the early 90s. And I think the UK is behind the US in terms of diversity in the workplace. And I really grew up with this feeling there that I had to be like a man to be successful. And so I am conscious of how that is not a collaborative environment. And yet when you get women together, they are so collaborative. Our company, all but one person is female, and we have such a collaborative environment. It's teamwork here. And, there is this growing virtual community of people like you who are engaging women together in a virtual way to build community. And it is the way we change the world for other women and help each other out. We have done that since there have been women. And I think you should be applauded for your part in that, just as much as, for how much Parlor Games is helping women feel safe discussing these intimate issues.
Well, thank you for that. And sometimes having these conversations means we have to be a little vulnerable ourselves. And because I want other women to know, hey, this has been my experience. This is what's happened with me, and it's okay.
Right.
It's okay to talk about it. And I love it when friends will call me and say, hey, I have a question for you. And I love that. I love being that friend that people feel comfortable with. So anyway, Kate, running a company is very demanding and stressful. What are some of your personal self-care non-negotiables? What do you do for yourself?
The first thing I do is guard my sleep. My partner and I sleep separately. We sleep in different rooms. He is restless, and he will often wake in the night and want to read in order to get back to sleep. My legs flail around the bed as if I was playing soccer. And we learned early on that we both sleep and get better sleep if we sleep separately. I guard my sleep. It is my space. When it gets to 9:00, I'm turning the lights off. It's like I'm not talking to anyone. My phone's turned off. I guard that. First thing. So then exercise. I do love to be outside. It's a little harder as I get older to be outside a lot in winter. I live in Grand Junction, Colorado, where it is cold in winter. It is cold, but getting outside is important. And I have found, for heaven's sake, at this point, I know myself. I do better when I've got a goal to chase. And so, I had not been getting out to do the hiking that I wanted. And last Thursday I was out there, beautiful day, thinking, all right, I need a goal. I'm going to do at least 100 miles by my birthday in August. My stretch goal, my 100 miles is a minimum. This is on mountain trails. 120 is really the goal. 140 is a stretch goal. And if I get to 150 miles by then, I'm the queen. So I set myself goals because I work that way. eating right. We eat super healthily. And then, keeping that spiritual grounding, as we were talking about earlier, not allowing myself to get into a tizzy about having to manage it all, but really just allowing what is, and being and living a life of gratitude. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm so grateful.
I think all of those are terrific. Those are great. What is your hope for Parlor Games and its impact on women's health in the long run? What do you have brewing there, Kate?
Well, so this is such an interesting question, because when it is literally 5 years ago today that Kirsty and I sat down and had our very first conversation about this.
Oh, happy anniversary.
I know. And were we to have projected, looked into the future like 5 years from now, we could not have possibly come up with the vision of what this would be. We just knew that we wanted to help women, that we wanted to have a good product. We wanted to be smart about it. I mean, we're smart business women. And so it's never been about, particularly chasing something about, other than just continuing the mission, and our mission is to save the world one vagina at a time. And I think as long as we keep doing that and we back it up with sound science and good business acumen and a sense of humor and kindness and compassion, I think that's my goal, is that we keep doing that.
Yeah.
And who knows where this ends up, but if we keep doing that, we're making a difference. And Kirsty's the same. She thinks exactly the same. I mean, that's one of the beauties of this experience, is that, I mean, for all that we're very different, we share such common goals, and that helps us work together so well as a business partners.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, Kate, can you please share with the audience where they can find you and Parlor Games?
So we're all over Facebook, we're all over Instagram, but really you will get the best information. Go straight to our website at www.parlor-games.com.
All right. All that information will be in the show notes. Kate Wells, thanks for being here today.
Michelle, it's been lovely. Thank you so much for your interest and for such cool questions. Nicely done.
Well, thank you. I try. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review the show where you listen to the podcast. And did you know that Asking for a Friend is available now to listen on YouTube? You can subscribe to the podcast there as well. Your support is appreciated, and it helps others find the show. Thank you.